DC Universe Rebirth, the biggest comics event of the 21st century. The greatest heroes and villains. The greatest graphic novels. The next epic starts here. Volume 1 collections of the best-selling comic books.
Hello, everyone. I'd like your help in welcoming Nicholas Scott to the stage. All right, show me the Wonder Woman love out there. Woo! All right, so Nicola, can you tell us a little bit about maybe an artist that inspired you early on to become an artist?
Ooh, well, I think probably my earliest inspiration artist-wise was my mum, because she was an artist, my grandmother was an artist, and it was my mum who taught me how to draw, she taught me how to paint, and when I was really young, probably too young, she used to take me to life drawing classes with her.
Oh, wow.
And it was the 70s, and when I was really young, she would sort of draw these sort of beautiful, fleshy, naked ladies, and then, you'd draw them quite quickly, and she'd hand them to me, and I'd put sort of big Wonder Woman hair on them and draw boots on them and
That's amazing.
sort of Wonder Woman them up a little bit. And eventually she sort of started telling me to draw the model. She'd sort of give me paper and charcoal and tell me to draw the model.
That's amazing. So, out of Wonder Woman, what is your favorite aspect to draw about her?
More than anything, I love drawing her face. I just love trying to sort of capture the serenity and the strength and the compassion of her expression. Because while she's capable of incredible fierceness, I don't see her as a fierce character. She's more accommodating and welcoming and an accessible character.
Wonderful.
She goes out of her way to make herself accessible.
I love that. Yeah, it's definitely a very expressive face. It's beautiful. So, how many people have seen the Wonder Woman-inspired Cake Wars episode from last year?
Yeah.
Woo!
I haven't.
All right. So what was that kind of experience about being a judge on that show like for you?
I've done a couple of things like that before in Australia. But here the production is way bigger, in terms of the amount of people on the set, the size of the set, and all that kind of stuff. And it was actually a really fun day because everybody was really friendly and really chatty. And we got to eat some really weird ingredients in cakes. Like one of them was a chicken and waffles cake.
Oh my goodness,
and one
sounds
of them
good.
was a BLT cake. And the stranger the ingredients, weirdly, the more delicious the cake was.
Wonderful, that sounds great.
And some of the designs were extraordinary. The one that won at the end of the day was fantastic.
It was amazing. It was fantastic. I think the winners baked the cake that part of the special that was filmed at the DC headquarters last year as well.
That's right.
That was amazing celebration and around Wonder Woman's anniversary. So what kind of advice can you give to others out there that are looking to become an artist in the comics industry?
You really got to want to do it. You got to be really passionate because the reality of the job, which is great fun, it's a lot of work. All of us work from home. Most of the freelancers, we all work from home, and it requires many hours almost every single day of the week. And so that's quite the commitment. But the upside is that we get to have a sort of creative outlet all the time. I get to sort of participate and contribute to the legacy of these amazing characters that have been around for such a long time.
Yeah, speaking of which, what does it feel like to work on this iconic character that has been around for like over 75 years now at this point?
Oh, look, Wonder Woman was the reason why I decided I wanted to draw comics for a living. And she's popped up in every book that I've worked on. But to sort of get to work on her title and sort of do an in-continuity origin story during her 75th anniversary in the lead up to the film coming up.
Yeah.
The timing of it I feel incredibly lucky and incredibly privileged to be part of that experience, and just sort of really lucky to be able to share that experience with my great friend Greg Rucker and my new friend Liam Sharp. You know, as a
Wonderful.
team, we
So
were
exciting.
just really lucky to all be together.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. And so the whole collaboration project, it seems like you guys get to meet together, but then, like you said, you have a lot of independent time to work on your craft and have that creative outlet. So do you guys have, like, you know, how does the creative process work a little bit for you?
Well, to start off with, like, Liam was attached to the book before, like, quite a bit before Greg and I were. And when Greg and I, were attached to work on the book, it was quite a quick turnaround. But luckily, Greg and I have loved Diana for forever, and so we talk about her a lot. We've talked about her over and over and over again for 10 years, with the hope that we would eventually get the opportunity to do something like this, but never quite seeing when that might happen. Always presuming it would be 5-10 years away.
Okay.
And when it finally suddenly happened, we sort of had to action station straight away. And the three of us all got on Skype together, and we had like a number of really long marathon Skype sessions where we just sort of talked about the characters, and we talked about the theme, and we talked about what we all wanted out of the experience, and what we wanted for Diana, and what we wanted for Steve, and how we considered Ares. And, you know, everyone had really interesting, challenging things to contribute. But what was very clear from the first moment was that we all got along and we all understood each other's motivation.
Oh, that's great.
And it made for, we were really lucky that, you know, we got to have our Team Diana experience all together.
That's amazing. And I remember talking to you, I think it was yesterday, just about some of the kind of the locations that you eventually weave into the story in terms of the artwork, and finding one that was even local to San Diego to make that connection.
Yeah.
And so is that usually a challenging thing for you in terms of the art, when you have to consider all of the surroundings along with the characters, as opposed to just focusing on Diana and her beautiful expressive face?
Well, I feel like a big part of the fun of being able to create comics is not only working on the characters, but the context that these characters are in is what really sort of adds depth and richness and layers of meaning. And when you can really sort of indulge and invest in those contexts and those settings and those backgrounds and those, you know, literal art backgrounds.
Yeah.
You know, both Liam and I are super into doing very detailed, very well researched, very sort of backgrounds that are inspired by artwork, by real places, by all these kinds of things. That just sort of it makes Diana feel more real when you can see her in a context. So sort of drawing her in Themyscira on the island was one of my favorite things to do. It just made her whole world open all the way up, and said so much about who she is.
True.
And then, you know, doing that issue 10, where, you know, in the script, Greg said it takes place in a mall in San Diego. And I was like, I know exactly what mall we're going to. We're going to Horton Plaza up the road.
Exactly.
And, you know, that was because I knew it, but also it's a great setting. And it's visually really interesting. It's like an Escher, if anyone's ever been up there. If you haven't, you should go up there. It's super confusing. You'll never get your way out of there again. But it's sort of so visually interesting because of all of its weird architecture and colours and shapes and this, that, and the other. It was like, I have to set it there. It's going to be so hard to draw it, but it's going to be really satisfying.
Beautiful.
Visually.
Yeah, with all those different, like you said, maybe the architectural lines and things and that kind of symmetry that feeds into it, that gives the context for the story. Do we have any question? I can take one question from the audience if anybody has something for Nicola. Yes, let me come over to you.
What's your favorite villain to draw?
My favorite villain? Yikes. Look, I have to say, I did have a lot of fun when I was working on Earth 2 drawing Steppenwolf.
Oh.
He is... It's not like he's the ultimate bad guy or anything, but he's such an accomplished warrior. And there was something quite satisfying about, you know, this guy with an axe destroying an entire armada. You know?
That's cool. What does it feel like to see or experience this one character that you've been now bringing to life on the page, now, you know, come to life in a very real way with the film that came out recently?
Well, you know, like anyone who's been a Wonder Woman fan for a long time, we've been wanting something. You know, we've been lucky enough to have such a fabulous representation thanks to Linda Carter from the 70s show. Mm-hmm. But, you know, like everyone whose favorite character is Batman or everyone whose favorite character is Superman, they've had sort of new versions pretty consistently. And so we've really wanted a Wonder Woman one. And there's always been something in development. But, you know, development and execution don't always equal satisfaction. Mm-hmm. And every time that one was coming along, you just sort of cross your fingers and hope that it would happen and that it would be good. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so many of them fell through for so many different reasons. Mm-hmm. And then for one to finally sort of actually get moving and move ahead, you're just like, oh my God, it's coming. And then all you hope is, oh, I just hope it will be good. And for it to be as good as it was and blow everyone away so thoroughly. And make such an impact on the general audience. Yeah. You know, it's. I was talking on the Wonder Woman 75th anniversary panel last year upstairs with Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot. Mm-hmm. I got to say that 5 years ago, my favorite character, Wonder Woman, felt like an old-fashioned character. Mm. You know, she was, unless you read her comics, you were out of step with her. She felt. Your memory of her was Linda Carter, and it just felt old-fashioned. Sure. Where now, everybody is aware of how awesome she is again. Mm-hmm. And I love that, you know, everyone is now sharing and experiencing how I felt about her all the time.
That's amazing. That's so great. So, like, for some of, I guess we have some maybe new people to comics and to the picking up Wonder Woman for the first time. What is maybe one thing about Diana that you would hope them to kind of pick up and feel for themselves?
I think her accessibility and inclusion and compassion. I think I've been talking about the movie so much with all of my friends that I only get to see here at Comic-Con. Mm-hmm. We've been just talking about the movie nonstop because we love it so much. Mm-hmm. And a couple of my favorite lines from the whole movie is the scene in the village once they're all sort of celebrating their victory, and Steve looks around, seeing everyone happy, and he turns to Diana and he says, "You did this," and she turns back to him and says, "We did," and that to me is Diana.
Definitely. So it's definitely standing for courage, but you know, team leadership, everything. It's wonderful. So I'll take maybe one more question from the audience. Anybody have one for Nicola? Anything about Wonder Woman? Anything that's been pressing you guys? No? All right. Well, so you have been, I remember for the filming, like going back to the Cake Wars taping, which was so unique and really special. And it was the finale was filmed at the DC headquarters. What is like one iconic thing that you would kind of point out is really cool about being there, being where like the origin of a lot of these comics now come to be and where they become live?
Repeat the question?
Yeah, so just
I kind of lost track.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm super jet lagged.
No worries. So just like being in the DC headquarters, like when it's you see all these team members working on all different aspects of letting the fans know about all the comics and just every character that comes out. Like, is there anything that just stood out to you about how the office is? If there's a piece of artwork or iconic something on the walls that caught your eye?
Well, look, the offices are so much fun. I remember the New York offices, and they were pretty fun, but the Burbank office is just extraordinary. You walk around, and there's just fabulous artwork up on the walls, and maquettes everywhere and these amazing statues and, you know, life-size Clark Kents, and the whole place is just Disneyland.
Very cool.
But certainly the thing that surprised me but made me really happy, and this is really self-serving, was the UN Wonder Woman piece up on the wall in the lobby.
Sure.
It made me really happy to see that, because I was so happy when that was happening and really disappointed when it you know, was taken away. I feel like if it was happening right now, no one would complain.
Yeah, just because, yeah. It was beautiful, though. Like you said, the artwork is gorgeous and everything. So aside from her very expressive face with Wonder Woman, some of the iconic things about her, even attire, like her tiara, her lasso of truth, even just the other aspects of her armor. Do you have any other favorite like items that you like to draw?
I feel like what appealed to me about Wonder Woman initially, like this is when I was really young and I had never seen a superhero before, and suddenly Linda Carter was on my TV show jumping over cars and throwing bad guys around. I loved how sort of incidentally glamorous she was. You know, that this costume was so bright and colorful, and it had all these amazing accessories that did stuff, you know, like the lasso and the bracelets. I spent a good deal of my youth sort of improvising bracelets out of anything that I could lay my hands on, to the point of sometimes damaging myself or cutting off my circulation.
Oh, no.
Because I just wanted to have Wonder Woman bracelets on all the time. And every time I had something on that was a little bit like a Wonder Woman bracelet, I'd just be looking at my wrists nonstop going, Wonder Woman!
And doing the pose, I'm sure, like everybody knows how to do.
Oh, yeah. And I was super proud when I was, I don't know, 6, that I felt like I had nailed the spin so much better than any of my friends.
Spin move.
It was like, no, you're doing it wrong.
That's awesome. So let's see. Out of the DC universe, what character have you not drawn yet that you might want to take a stab at?
There are 2 sort of really well-known DC characters that I've had sort of very brief encounters with that I would love to have quite a bit more time with, because I feel like they're really interesting, complex, super layered characters, and I have something to say or to contribute to the conversation. And they are Catwoman and Nightwing.
Both good choices.
2 of my all-time favorites. I just love them, and I'd love to spend a little time with them.
That's wonderful. Okay, we'll take one more question, I guess, for the audience. You have one?
Yeah. Do you feel there's any similarities between Detective Rowan Black and Wonder Woman?
Oh yeah, by design. So when I sort of started drawing her, the first sort of sketches, once I sort of nailed the idea of her look, sort of giving her a sort of 70s kind of Joan Jett inspired hairdo and stuff. I know I wanted a really soulful face, and the only face that I could think of, especially the eyes, was Linda Carter, and so I was like, I'm going to do that for myself. I'm just going to give myself the opportunity to draw Linda Carter all day, every day, and just, you know, whack some Joan Jett hair on her. But I see a lot of similarity anyway, because Wonder Woman is essentially a very spiritually engaged pagan character, you know, and there is, I like when there's layers of ritual that are a part of her spiritual identity, and there is an element of magic that's intrinsic in Wonder Woman, you know, with the lasso and the invisible island, and you know, I used to draw the star in her tiara with a circle around it, so it was like a pentagram protection, and so there are sort of visual themes and also spiritual overtones that, to me, relate the characters quite significantly. And also because witches, by sort of European tradition, are sort of considered female lines, you know, sort of female hereditary lines. sort of reminds me of that sort of Amazon aspect and such. So, yeah, there's always sort of been a slight relation. I think that's why I found witchcraft really fascinating as a subject when I was in high school. You know, I sort of did a paper for one of my history classes on sort of witchcraft when I think it was about 13. And it fascinated me, and part of that was how much I felt like it related to Wonder Woman. And so, yes, absolutely, there is quite the relation.
That's great. Can you tell us one, I guess, aspect that's a little challenging to draw out of everything that you work on? Like we talked about the scenes, the backgrounds, her actual, expressive face, the different sequences. What is the one challenging thing that's always kind of hard for you to draw?
The only time I find myself going, it's not so much the execution that's challenging. It's just sort of more the idea. Every time you have to draw something that you've never drawn before, because when you work as much as we in the industry do, you just sort of build up a really good mental visual library, so you can just sort of flip through in your head. You know what a car looks like. You know what, and if you have to sort of go into specifics or whatever, it's really easy to just reference. But suddenly, every now and then, you have to sort of draw something really not in your wheelhouse, and that can really slow you down. But because it gives you the opportunity to go into a sort of deep dive research thing. I'll sort of open up Google Images and see what I can find and look for references. I end up sort of being the most satisfied with those pictures because they're the ones that it's like, I didn't know I could do that until I did it.
That's fascinating. That's great.
But sort of when it comes to things that are really important to me that aren't hard to do, but they're sort of take a bit of work, I really love drawing Wonder Woman's hair. Like doing a sketch like this, I get really frustrated because what I would like to do is just spend an hour and a half just giving her luxurious, shampoo commercial hair.
Very Sassoon-y.
And I don't have time, so it ends up being super scribbly, and I just want to black it all out, and I don't have a wedge tip Sharpie.
That's totally fine. So, just going back a little bit to your process, do you find you get inspiration when you sit down to work or before you sit down to work in, say, going for a walk, kind of taking in the scenery, or do you like to just kind of unwind maybe with a cup of...
Yeah, look, there are definite things that you need to do to sort of keep yourself fresh.
Yeah.
But really, inspiration-wise, I always say to whatever writers I'm working with that I want scripts as early as possible. I don't want to be sort of starting on a script the day that I get it.
Sure.
I'd like to sort of read through it a few times, and if I can let the ideas and the themes of it kind of marinate and come to the surface a little more over a week, just sort of really meditate on what the writer's intention is, because quite often they're not writing that. They're writing the dialogue and some stage directions. And, I love subtext, and I'm always looking for it. And sometimes, the writers don't write subtext, but it's there if you go looking for it.
True.
And so I like to just sort of have that. It's really just time. It's not doing anything necessarily specific.
Yeah.
I could just be doing the washing up and sort of dwelling on a scene or an aspect of the issue which I feel is important. And somewhere in there, just sort of considering what I've read a few times, I'll think, oh, it's that moment. It's not the moment that I thought it was, the big moment.
Yeah.
It's the little moment just before it or the little moment just after it or whatever. I feel like that's where the gravity of that scene is.
Yeah.
And then it makes me rethink the whole flow of the scene and the structure of the layout and such.
That's amazing.
So if I can get as much time to do that as possible, I'm always way more satisfied with the result and sort of the process as well.
That's amazing. So going back to talking about drawing when you her origin story back on her home of Themyscira, what is your favorite thing there to draw when you got to sit down and do that?
Look, Paradise, if I could live in any existence, I would be living on Paradise Island. I'd miss my husband, but bye. I don't care because I just love the idea of a culture that has sort of, because they're immortal. Like in the film, they only really got to show, because it was limited time, they only really got to show the warrior aspect. But when you consider this nation of immortal people that have sort of everything that they create and develop is about sustainability. It's about their environment. It's about them as a society. Mm-hmm. Everything has kind of been elevated to a high art because they've just been around so long that, there's everyone is so skilled at everything. Because I imagine did I just turn that off? Oh. Or turn it down?
Wait, I think it's fine. Oh.
You can't? Oh, you shut up.
Oh. I think you're fine.
Back in your box. There's sort of, I sort of figure in my head that like every 100 years they kind of rotate.
Yeah.
It's your job to do this now, or it's your job to do that, or they get to sort of fulfill their interests. But
sure.
It's very much a community.
Sure.
And I love that aspect, that everyone's sort of participating in their community. And
That's awesome.
That and the fact that it's like the most beautiful place on earth. Like the island that they designed for the film is so beautiful. I wish we got to see more of the architecture. I wish we got to spend more time there. Mm-hmm. I want to pitch a TV series like kind of Gotham and whatchamacallit, Krypton. That's sort of about the Amazons on the island. About them arriving on the island and protecting the island and establishing the island, and them going from a warrior tribe. I think there's something really interesting about a tribe of warriors who have actively decided to remove themselves from the theater of war because they've decided that war sucks.
Yeah.
And they keep their skills up. They know that they're never 100% safe, but they have sought sanctuary, and they're establishing it for themselves.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, they've managed to find immortality and grace on this island. And that aspect to me is just beautiful. And so I just love drawing everything about the island. Wow. I love sort of finding sort of real-world architectural influences and then sort of upping the game a little bit because, they've been there a long time. Mm-hmm. They've managed to maintain these beautiful old buildings and possibly grow them and build more and develop their own skills and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I loved what we were really sort of conscious of when Greg was writing scenes on the island, but specifically when I was drawing them, was that it's not just a warrior culture, it's a culture of all women.
Yeah.
And while they're all fit and healthy and capable, they're not all fit supermodels. I was working on the issues when the Olympic Games were on last year. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if you look at all the American athletes who were competing, they go from super tiny and compact gymnasts to sort of really big, muscly women who are like shot putting or whatever. They're all really fit and they're all really strong, but they're not all built the same way. That there is variety, and that variety represents us. That represents all of us. And that being healthy doesn't necessarily mean being skinny, because some women are really built and some women are really tiny, and some people are really short and some women are really tall, and that I wanted to sort of find that within the community and give everyone some sort of age variety, so it's not as though everyone's 25 on this island.
That's awesome. So as we wrap it up, I do have one trivia question for those that joined us here today. Just because we've talked about it for a couple times, I'll make it easy on you. So by a show of hands, and I'll pick the first one I see, so what show was she a judge on last year for the Wonder Woman 75th? Yes. Yes, Cake Wars. We have a winner over here. All right, help me join me in thanking Nicola Scott for her stage demonstration today, please. And woo!
I'm pretty sure that's what just happened. Hi.
All right, thank you guys so much for joining us, too.